All right. So,
I want to finish that question.
Yeah. Okay.
I want that question answered.
All right.
Why don't you want to challenge yourself to change the way you think in order to make someone else feel more comfortable? Why wasn't that your immediate, like I was saying to you, I felt uncomfortable with it. I was being told that I had to change the way I thought of somebody, and I didn't really believe it. And I still don't fully. I'm not 100% there. But I recognized that it was my discomfort with wanting to change how I thought that was keeping me from doing it. So I challenged myself to change the way I thought and felt. And the only way I could do that was by putting into practice those things that I was being told to do.
By, I guess, the government, really.
And initially, it wasn't really the government. It was social. It was social media more than anything.
But then eventually the government got involved. And
even
if it wasn't formally, government, it was they were involved and they were advocating at least. And I think there are bills that were with the prorogued parliament right now. I'm not sure if they're what's happening with them, but like the censorship bill was making certain kinds of online conduct.
Right. And if there's a group of people that wants to be thought of in a different way, I don't know what harm it causes me.
So we talked about this before, and again, the point that I'm trying to make is that they can consider themselves whatever they want. I don't have any problem with that. What is the big problem for me is that I'm being told what I have to think. I'm being told that my opinions are, if they're the wrong quote opinions, quote unquote, are invalid if they are not consensus. And not even consensus, because it's not consensus. It's like mandated from above.
But before that,
a small group.
But my question to you was, why don't you want to challenge yourself?
I do. I just reached a different conclusion than you have. So we're talking about, this isn't the point of the discussion, but right now we're talking about the transgender stuff and the requirement
pronouns.
Whether it was actually like formally legislated or not, that it was more or less, penalized, at least publicly, if not criminally, for not using the correct pronouns, etc. Like the whole Jordan Peterson thing. And I'm trying to make the point that I can disagree with the point of view of the transsexual who thinks that they're a woman, who's gone through that process. I can disagree and think that they're a biological male who had a medical procedure, and still be civil, and still they can retain all of their rights. They can conduct themselves exactly as they like in the world. And I can be respectful in interactions with them. I can be respectful and kind.
But you're still going to refuse to call them by the pronoun they want to be called by?
I'm not going to be like in your face about it. I'm not going to say, hey man, like, hey dude, unless we're there, unless we're buddies. And then I start doing that. That's the whole, this is another point I want to make, that online discourse is so different from the interactions that people in a community are having. Like you see the legacy media's account of, like, for instance, the Freedom Rally. And then you go to the Freedom Rally, which I did, and you see how vastly different it is from what you're being told it is. And I think, like, everything is like that now. The media, like the public discourse, which really is largely constructed by the media, the legacy media, and the government, and satellite institutions of government and media, they tell us how things are. And then you go around in the world and you're like, I'm fine with my black neighbor. I'm fine with my COVID scared neighbor. Like, I'm fine with the Jewish person or whoever, the transsexual. Like, we're not having issues in our day-to-day going about. I still, buy my latkes or whatever, and I still go to Albert's on St. Clair and have a laugh. Like, we're not having any problems. Right in the middle of COVID, or right in the middle of, or I'm working on site with a Russian and I'm Ukrainian, and we're fine. But then you go online and it's everything, or onto the television. Who watches television anymore? And it tells you that everybody's fighting everywhere all the time, and the world just isn't that.
As soon as you go on social media, everyone is fighting everywhere.
But again, it's different. But then you bring those people into a room together, and they're nice. They're normal.
Sure, right.
They're not. Right.
So why can't those people online be just as respectful?
They can,
they are in person.
And they can still have an opinion that is different from the other person's,
right.
Other person sitting across the table from them. So I can sit across from a transsexual.
Use the pronoun that person wants them to use. Absolutely, they
no,
should.
because then they're subjugating their own understanding of the world. So my understanding of the world is that a man that's gone through a medical process and has become female-like. That is my understanding. That is what has happened, and that person is now has the likeness of what we. And this comes back to the whole "what is a woman" thing, right? Like, it's the what they're trying to turn themselves into is based on an elementary biological form or ideal. So they're trying to work towards something that they're not, or that they weren't. That has this idealized biological version of itself, which comes from
they're
nature.
Working towards that because that's how they felt inside.
Great, and they can, and they should. The only thing is, turn off the phone. The only thing is that they can't force other people to tell them that you must think that I'm a woman, otherwise
No.
you are going to be
I'm not
penalized.
saying you have to think that they're a woman. I'm saying you have to treat them. You have to respect
you can treat them like a person.
Okay.
You can treat them like a person,
so
like
you're
friend,
totally,
neighbor.
And you can say she instead of he.
Well, that's where it gets funny, right? Because
No.
I don't think
It's not
she's
that
a
it
she. I don't think she's
Okay.
a she.
Okay.
So I can refer to them as Janet or whatever their name is. I can say, "Hey, Janet," and just avoid the things that are going to make things difficult.
But
Once you
you're
have a
saying
relationship with them,
is-
then you can open things up a little bit, and you can start saying, like, we all know that once you get friendly with people, my coworker Ishmael, for instance, he's from Saint Vincent, and we kind of make racial jokes all the time, and it's like, we're buddies,
and that's fine,
right?
To do
So
because
same
you're
thing,
buddies.
right? Same thing.
You can't do that online, and if you do, you should be punished.
Which comes to the other point that I was making earlier, which is that I think we have to get away from putting responsibility of the self on everyone else. And that's hard, but that is the world. Like, everybody else has to do that. Ari has to do that. Sorry, I don't know if I should use your name or not. I have to do that. I have to figure out a way to be comfortable in the world with the things that I am, all the different aspects of myself.
Not comfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And right now,
and it's not everybody else's fault, and I can't and nobody's going to accept responsibility for that. Nobody's going to say it's my responsibility that you feel comfortable and happy with your place in the world. Nobody's doing that for me.
No.
Nobody's as a white Ukrainian middle class born, not middle class anymore, I wish. 51-year-old man, nobody is soft gloving me. Nobody. It's all on me to feel good about my place in the world.
Right.
And that's it. And it's got to be for everybody.
It would be really great if the other people in the world treated you the way you wanted to be treated. But you're saying I shouldn't have to.
I get a different level of, so on a scale from 0 to 10, it's mostly like 9 and below. Every day with every individual that the rating of how much respect and kindness and thoughtfulness I'm getting in interactions with every single individual I interact with on a daily basis. There's a range, And almost none of it is all that satisfying. Most of my interactions with other human beings are fine. They're fine. But they're not like rewarding, or they're not like reaffirming. They just are what they are. You know, I got to get my stuff done. They got to get their stuff done, and
they can be hurtful. And you don't seem to think that people should be held accountable for hurting other people, unless it's physical. That's a lot of. Yeah,
you have to draw a line of what is considered harmful conduct, and I don't think it can be somebody posting tweets online that somebody else reads on their phone while they're transiting because they got nothing better to do, and they just want to be, they're already angry about stuff. They read a tweet that they don't like, and they probably even go searching out the tweets that they don't like, right? Because of the whole freaking, like, it's complicated.
The person who's reading it instead of the person who's writing it.
Everybody should be trying their best to do better. Everybody should be trying their best to do better.
And when they're not, what should we do?
Everybody is always failing and succeeding. Every day, everybody's failing and succeeding.
As a society?
What we can't do is make it illegal penalty under law for people to have divergent opinions, to be able to look around the world with their own eyes, draw conclusions, and then if those conclusions are in disagreement with whatever the societal norms are. I mean, again, like this, the LGBTQ stuff is not like consensus. It's a small group. It's small group driven.
But
so it's not like everybody's
small groups who have been striving to be treated the way they want to be treated.
Yes, for sure.
And why are they not just another group that is just striving
to
be treated
they are.
the way...
They are. But the solution to that...
against it.
No, I'm not against that. I'm against to the solution you're proposing, which is that we can't express our opinions or thoughts. That's the part that is really problematic, man.
But this all started, to go back, this started because we were talking about Jordan Peterson, who, honestly, I really know nothing about. I only know what you've told me about him, which was that he is a mental health professional. And as far as I'm concerned, and my opinion seems to differ from yours, is that if you're a mental health professional and you have social media accounts, you are obligated to speak as the representative of your profession.
Yeah, and I disagree with that.
And when you don't, you should expect that the people who are in that profession to take action against you.
Yeah, I disagree with that. I think that is a slippery slope. That's one of the many slippery slopes towards the Orwellian world that we're already kind of living in, where speech and thought and opinion is already being policed. It's already happening.
I mean, it's always been.
Right,
really.
but again, the Western ideal, the Western ideal that we've all grown up, I think just, we don't talk about it, we don't think about it really until recently. In recent years, this is becoming a thing. And maybe that's for good reason. We have to kind of look at it again. But we grew up feeling like you could kind of say and think whatever you want, and that's fine. And now suddenly you can't.
We didn't grow up that way, though. You could never say whatever you wanted, because humans, like, we're very social creatures, and the minute we start saying things that the group disagrees with, we try to either stop saying those things because we don't want to be
the repercussions
exiled,
would be
right?
social. They wouldn't be wouldn't be judicial or criminal or professional.
When you have something as vast as social media, though, the social exile is less of a deterrent.
Well, this is where this is such a complex issue, but this is where the personal responsibility part comes in, because people have to understand that they are responsible for their own self-worth, understanding of their place in the world, how they're going to be comfortable being who they are. Each of us is fighting that battle every day.
But you don't see how all of this escalates into violence?
Well, as we talked about earlier,
don't wanna
I
respect me.
believe statistically that there's less violence now than there's ever
Yeah.
really been.
I am
You know,
of
there
the
might be an
opinion
uptick
that-
right now, but like generally speaking, since like let's say the 80s, that the world has never, at least the Western world has never been safer. People have never been wealthier, generally speaking. People, almost everybody owns a car, a TV, are feeding themselves generally on a regular basis. I know times are hard right now for everybody. But there's like a baseline that everybody has now that they didn't have. I think somebody would be foolish to say that the same class of person in 1950 and before had anywhere close to the standard of living that the same class of person in 2025 has.
And I think it's amazing that we've managed to tackle that, even though, you know, everybody always is feeling like they don't have enough. That's just, I think, human nature. But I think it's amazing that we've gotten to that point in Western society, like you said, like where we have the food we need, we have a car, we have a TV, we have all of these things. So, and that to me is a symbol of how we've evolved as a society. Now we have to evolve on the next level, which is socially, which is treating people with respect and the way they want to be treated, and putting ourselves, challenging our own thoughts and preconceptions about how we should treat people. And I am of the opinion that just because something makes me uncomfortable and someone's telling me I have to do it doesn't mean it's wrong. It might feel wrong to me. It might feel uncomfortable, and I might get my back up. But the minute I feel that way, I have to challenge myself about why I feel that way. And realize that the problem isn't with them, it's with me. I'm the one getting my back up. All they want me to do is call them she. And why the hell can't I do that? I always look to myself. I always say when I'm angry about something, when something is bothering me, I always ask myself, what is my role in this? Why am I feeling this way? And then oftentimes it's really uncomfortable and I don't like it. And then I got to challenge myself. That's all I got.
I remember going to a restaurant downtown, and there was a hostess or host, I don't even know. And I walked in the door, and he/they, their, whatever, was stunning. They were like this incredible creation of 2024, or what year? I think it was 2023. Like a kind of person that you just regularly run into now that you might run into one time in your lifetime, you know, prior to 1990. And I remember looking at this person going, oh my God, they're amazing. They were beautiful in this very, I don't want to even say androgynous, because it was almost like another sex, you know, like they weren't really a man, weren't really a woman. I couldn't guess what they were biologically. The name even was the same, and we're done up like the way only people can do now, like with the, you know, jewelry and the clothing. Like they just knew how to make themselves into this amazing creature with modern day resources. And I loved it. And I was very grateful that the world now has this. Because it's interesting, it's fun, it's dynamic, it's different, there's so much about it to like and be excited about. And I still need to, for myself, and I think for everybody else, that we all need to be able to reach our own conclusions, especially about things that are very fuzzy. And I mean, almost everything is fuzzy, but especially that stuff. And just
what's fuzzy about it?
Well, for all of human civilization, and as long as we've been cataloging, doing biology, as long as we've been doing science, as long as we've been studying, you know, as long as there's been anthropology, as long as we've been studying ourselves, there's been a general understanding about basic human biology, which is that there's two sexes and that you need a male who has a penis and a scrotum with testicles in it, who can produce sperm, which is the male counterpart to the female who has ovaries, produces eggs, has a womb to house the growing fetus to produce a baby. And there wasn't a cultural context to it. That wasn't a concern. We weren't thinking about things in that way, at least, not on a macro level. And maybe there was these kinds of things coming up over the millennia in, maybe in Greece when there was pederasty happening all the time.
I don't know what that is.
There was like a whole cultural thing there where young men were groomed as, like, I can't remember what they were called, but like basically sexual and intellectual understudies of, wise, privileged individuals in this society. There's a term for it.
Anyway.
So I can't remember, what was the point I was making?
I'm not really sure. I feel...
Right, fuzzy. So so now in 2017, 18, this becomes an issue with the first thing about the bathrooms. And I remember, like, when it came into the public discourse, whenever I talk about legacy media or whenever I talk about the conversation or public discourse, I really always mean the prime messengers, which are network news and the prime movers in the internet space. So anyways, the whole bathroom thing came out of nowhere, I remember. And I was like, how is this become occupying so much space in public discourse when it affects so few people? It's such a small thing. I can't remember what the first news item was, but it was somewhere around 2015, 2016, same time as the Jordan Peterson stuff first started way back when, the U of T stuff. And I remember thinking, like, it's amazing to me how this is occupying so much space in the public discourse, considering how few people were even thinking about it at all. Like, it wasn't part of everyday conversation at that time. It wasn't part of the community debate. Like you weren't going to work and saying, how come men can't use women's bathrooms? Like, nobody was having that conversation. Suddenly, that's all you could hear on CBC News, and it was like occupying most of the space. And I was like, where does this come from? Who drives these narratives? Anyways, all of that is to say is that, or coming back to the original thing, which is that we never thought about gender as being a cultural conversation or a cultural topic. It was settled. The biological parts of it, the scientific parts of it were settled for years. It wasn't a discussion people were having. And suddenly they're having it. Really, in a 15-year window compared to, let's say, 8,000 years, maybe. Let's say 8,000 years. And now suddenly everybody just like this is supposed to switch. That's a big ask.
Yeah. Oh, for
and
sure.
And I'm an artist. I'm fairly progressive. I've grown up, or I grew up as an adult, being a professional artist for most of my life, surrounded by homosexuals, not transsexuals really, but lots of homosexuals. And so it's not like they haven't been a part of my...
anyway.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
I know you're not.
So my position comes from a place of, I think, basically like imperial logic. I'm taking in the information around me, working it through, drawing a conclusion, and forming an opinion based on that conclusion. And my conclusion is that a transsexual who's, let's say, male to converted to female has undergone a medical process to make themselves more female-like, biologically female-like. But that doesn't mean to me that they are a woman. I don't think they are a woman. They can exist as a woman. Again, I'm not taking away their rights, their abilities, their freedoms to conduct themselves as they see fit, to think of themselves as they see fit, but they can't. Nobody's can't force me to think differently.
Nobody's asking you to. They're asking you to speak to them as though they're a woman.
Speech and thought are we try to make them as close as possible. We try
No,
to.
we don't.
We're trying to, though. I'm always complaining about how frustrated I am by my ability to communicate.
We have a million
orally.
thoughts
The
that
goal,
we don't verbalize.
but the goal is always to make your thought process as concise and eloquent as possible with oral language. That's what we're trying to do. Is make it so it's much more of a one-to-one. Much more of a clear through line from thought to.
You haven't really explained though. You've made your point in terms of how you should think about them, or how you do, but you haven't engaged at all in changing your behavior in terms of speaking. Why is that so uncomfortable to you? Why is it so offensive that you should change? That you should change?
Because it's
your
really,
speaking?
it's like
How's that impeding your rights?
it's such a contradiction against my thought. So my brain is saying one thing, my mind is screaming out, "This is your understanding of the world." So I have to do this incredibly laborious mechanical process in mid-conversation to try and speak in terms that I don't either think, believe, understand to be true.
So
that's
you
a
don't
lot.
wanna
That's
do
a
it because
that's a.
you don't want to make the effort. That's all I just heard was that it was.
I can
really
do it,
hard.
but I can do it. I can make the effort, but it's just different. It's just I can just avoid the language.
But that's not what you're upset about. You're upset that people are being told to behave differently.
I'm being told that people are saying that I'm upset about potential criminal repercussions for not using mandated language. That's what really bothers me. And this comes to the whole free speech thing, which is that if we start saying people aren't allowed to say certain things, as unlikable as they are, we're going down that road.
They've only gone after him because of his profession.
No, it started before that. But anyways,
He wasn't
can we get to the?
Yeah.
If we want to, we can come back to it. I think you're more interested in what we're talking about now.
Yeah.
So the idea was that I have a theory on governmental reform that I want to put out on the internet, and that was the whole purpose of even putting this podcast together. And my friend Ari has so kindly agreed to participate against his better judgment, and I think he's suffering through this whole thing. Anyways, so
and I'm willing to make myself uncomfortable,
and yes, which I really appreciate. And you're a bigger man than me. But I've told Ari over and over again through the years that he is my moral compass. I go to him all the time whenever I'm having trouble figuring stuff out. Okay, so what I asked Ari to help me out with was talking with the World Wide Web and all the people out there about my idea, which is basically,
Yeah, I think you could maybe just summarize what the idea is. I need to hear it again as well,
right?
Because I don't know how far into the weeds you've gotten with it.
Would it be weird to read my ChatGPT pitch?
It's really long.
It's long, eh?
It's very long.
All right, I asked
summarize.
ChatGPT to make a pitch for me, and it's pretty good, but it is long. I think everybody will turn off.
It's 2 pages, yeah.
Okay, basically the idea is a better version of government for the people, by the people, which we've constructed the present system. So I'm only going to talk about Canadian politics. I'm not going to, because that's where I live and that's what I know. Ish.
You know more than I do, that's for sure.
And so start at home, right? So this is an idea for changing the Canadian version, and basically I hesitate saying it out loud. I feel like I want to have like some big marquee and beautiful language, a great one sentence elevator pitch. I don't have it, but basically it's a new body of government that would be drafted, so kind of like jury duty. So that's the model for what I'm thinking of, which is you're picking people from the common citizenry, that your community, to adjudicate very, very important issues. And, you know, in case of like a murder trial, like there's nothing more important than a person's life. And jury duty selects individuals just from the community, and they don't go to a either a appointed group of people to decide the outcome of this person's life. It's a drafted body of citizens, just common people. And I think we could have a body like that. In Canada, it would be a fourth body if we just stick with the existing system and add on.
So what are the bodies again? So you've got the House of Commons.
House of Commons, the Senate, and the Governor General, the Queen's representative,
right.
which
Who
is
doesn't really
so it's
do anything.
It's really it's really a bicameral legislation, which means two.
Oh yeah.
So two parts.
House of Commons and the Senate.
Yeah. Now the governor. I don't want to pretend to be an expert. I've been doing research for months, but you know I'm kind of an idiot. I don't retain anything. So I don't want to act like an expert, but bicameral legislation has these two parts to it: the House of Commons and the Senate in Canada. The Senate is appointed, the House of Commons is elected, and we just voted.
Yeah.
So, and I also only want to talk about it on the federal level right now. I don't want to talk about it on the provincial level, though. I think that would be.
No, I was actually wondering if your idea might be better suited to start in the provincial
Could,
level.
yeah. I'm not proposing any formal system. I'm just proposing this idea, and then the details of how to work it out would be something that, you know, smarter people would work out. But I at least just wanted to get this idea out there, because I have been frustrated for years by government. I've always thought it seemed broken, and you know, Ari just went and voted, and he, you know, as a guy that's just, you know, just trying to survive life, trying to get through the day, and he goes to the voting booth and he doesn't see Doug Ford or the other leaders' names on the ballot. He's voting now for the MP in his riding who he has no idea about.
Again, that's sort of my fault, though, because I didn't do the research, but I think I stand with probably 90% of the people.
Most people are you.
Yeah.
And it's a lot to ask, because you have to do a lot of homework to find out. First of all,
although arguably information has never been easier to get. Doesn't really. That is true. I didn't spend the time to get the information.
Right.
And that's on me.
Yeah. And most people,
again, like we said, that's most people.
Right, which, you know, that brings
43% voted? 46?
It wasn't a lot. It ended up being like 20% of the voting public voted for the PC party.
Right.
Of just eligible voters.
Yeah.
Which isn't great.
Yeah.
But anyways, there's a million things that we could look at in terms of how the government exists that you'd want to change. But my biggest issue with the government is that it often, if not always, seems to be focused and occupied with things that I'm like, nobody I know is interested or cares about this stuff or agrees with the, and I'm not talking about like the basic stuff like water and hydroelectricity and road infrastructure. Like that doesn't take up public space, and it should. That should actually be what we should be hearing about, because those are the things that really affect everybody. But what we hear about is other things like, you know, the culture stuff that we were talking about. That's mostly these weird other issues that occupy the space. And when they're talking about them, first of all, I'm like, why is this occupying so much space? Secondly, is like, why are they reaching the conclusions that they're reaching when it's so disparate from, it seems to me, most of the people that I know. So that's one issue. But the bigger issue is that there's always the same sorts of people getting into government, and really it's the people that want power. The people that want money, the people that want power are the people that run for office. And then, so that's on the MP side of things. And then on the Senate side of things, the Senate historically was a privileged group of people. Like that's how it started out, and it's mostly been that throughout. You know, it started out as the Canadian version of democracy is the Westminster system, which was inherited from the British system, from England. You had something to say? I forgot.
I had something to say. The statement you made that most people in politics just want power, and what was the other thing?
Money.
I don't,
Power, control,
I don't
money.
fully agree with that statement. I think that statement is. I think a lot of people get into politics to make a change, to make a difference. I think oftentimes, I think it sometimes evolves into that, to power. I certainly think on the higher levels, like the Senate, I think city councilors and stuff, I think a lot of them get into politics to make a difference. So I don't like painting everybody with that brush, and I also think a lot of our attitudes we get from movies.
Okay. I don't know any of these people. So,
no, me neither.
So
actually, I do know a few.
What?
I know somebody who ran for office.
Oh, I know somebody, but you don't know anybody in office.
No, I don't think so.
Right. I know a few people that have run for office.
Yeah. But they were people who got into politics, and did they get into it because they wanted power, or did they get into it because they wanted change?
But they didn't succeed.
No, they didn't. But that's why they got into it. I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I don't think you can make a blanket statement like that.
Okay, fair enough. It does seem, though, I think
when you get up high, absolutely.
Right. Okay. So, all right, let's agree on that point anyways, is that the higher up you go, the more likely it is that you are one of those types of people. And that is the thing that I'm trying to offset. I know so many people that have great ideas. We all are, everybody has a community of people who have smart ideas and lots of really good thoughts about how, society, government, all sorts of things could be different and change. And those people are never at the table. And this would be a way of bringing the actual humans that are living their lives in Canada to the table in a way that they never were able to be before because of the internet. This whole thing that's screwing everything up,
could also,
at the same time that it's making everything better, it could also be the thing that actually does government for the people, by the people for the first time. And there's a million ways you could do it. You could just say, everything could be, what is it called when you have, where everybody votes on, what's that called? There's a term when a referendum. You could make everything a referendum. Yeah. And every single citizen has the opportunity to vote. You could.
I think it would be hard to police that, because just like hacking and things like that. This is one of the problems I have with. I think when the internet was first coming out, it probably could have been done that way. I think there's just way too many ways of voter interference could happen.
Election fraud,
if it's all
right.
If you're not there in person making the X, I don't know if you could really do it online. Unfortunately,
so this kind of mitigates some of those problems of like having a referendum for everything, which seems unwieldy and difficult in a lot of ways.
Would it be great if we all had a little box that we carried around, and every time there was a vote in the House of Commons,
it'd be amazing.
Everybody could just push the button and say, I don't think I agree with that.
Yeah, and and bad too, right?
But then the voices would get heard.
Well, that's what I'm proposing here is that you and me have an opportunity now to be brought to the table. So there's different ways of doing it, but the principal idea is a drafted branch of government. So let's say a fourth body. You keep the Senate. But one option would be, and I'm trying not to focus on the idea of just getting rid of the Senate to make this.
How many seats are in the Senate?
100. It changes, but right now I believe there's 105.
And those seats.
There was 105
So the House of Commons, they say, okay, here's the law we want to pass. We'll send that up to the Senate, and then the Senate votes on it, right?
The Senate can propose bills, but
generally they're
like
voting.
99% of the time, the House of Commons makes the bills.
Right.
And
so we got a body of 105 people that are voting on whether the bill goes into law.
Yeah, and like they almost never strike bills down. They usually just kind of adjust bills.
So where do
the last time they from my research, the last time the Senate
voted down a bill,
and they didn't actually. It was just hung. It was 43-43. So then the bill didn't pass because you need the Senate approval, which was a bill about abortion rights. in 1991 that
so
was
where do you
proposed
want to
by
put your draftees?
well, could it happen
are they
in,
voting?
it,
Are they voting in the House of Commons or are they voting in the Senate?
no, it'd be a separate branch. I'm not exactly. I'm not. Again, I'm not trying. All I want to do is kind of like sketch out this idea, and then suggest maybe a few different ways. But I think first I need to convince anybody that's watching this about that it could actually be useful, helpful, and make things better.
I don't know. I mean, I think like
you can see it right away. Like you don't
instantly,
need to be convinced.
I don't need to be convinced. What I need to be convinced is how do you do it?
Well, here's the thing. The Senate. So whether you abolish the Senate or not, you could, or you could shrink
and they've
it.
been talking about that for years.
For years, because it's considered.
Yeah.
A lot of people think they don't do anything.
Yeah.
Now I
let's
So-
not talk about abolishing. Let's
okay. So
Let's just talk about
one
adding.
proposal that one structure that I thought of is that so everybody gets to keep their jobs. Nobody
Right.
has to quit working.
Right.
The Senate last year had something like 70. Sorry, not last year. Yes. So they averaged about 62 sessions over 4 years. So 200 so the 44th Parliament went from November 22nd, 2021 till January 6th, 2025. So roughly 4 years. And they had 250 sessions over that period of time. And these are like 3-hour sessions generally.
How many sessions?
250 over the course of 4 years.
Right.
So it's roughly 60 sessions a year, which works out to 5 a month, basically. So
and you have to be there in person?
Well, their attendance record is pretty spotty.
Is it?
Yeah. So, again, I don't want to make this about abolishing the Senate because it's not.
Hang on. If they're not there, do they get to vote though? Can they vote?
Yeah, they still have to vote.
So they don't have to show up to vote. So your draftees they don't have to.
Yeah, you know what? I can't speak to that. I'm not exactly sure how that. I don't know how that works.
All right, go on.
But the point would be is that, or one way of doing this is that you could have people still working their day jobs from BC, Alberta, and Nunavut, wherever. Does Nunavut? Is that? Yeah. I think I know they got changed up there like 20 years ago, but I was already at a high school. So
well, I know they're not called the Northwest Territories.
No, I know. Yeah, I know that too. So they could potentially participate by like, let's say 3 sessions or 5 a month, right? 60 sessions a year works out to 5 a month.
Mm-hmm.
So that would basically be not even 2 a week.
So wait, you haven't really told the listeners what your draftees are doing.
I don't know exactly. I don't know if they're only approving things. If
But
just
the way you explained it to me was that they would get a vote.
yes,
There would be additional.
they would
be
they would have kind of
a
a similar power as the Senate and the House of Commons, which
Right.
is that they would have the ability, certainly at the very least, they get the ability to vote yay or nay. At the very least, that
Right.
At the different stages. These bills all go through different stages, right? So they could. I think you have to propose a bill before you even start constructing a bill. So they could already at the very first level, like we want to.
Can they propose bills?
We want to write what? I think everything should be on the table. All the responsibilities that the House of Commons and the Senate has, because the Senate can propose bills too. They just don't generally. This drafted body of government should have all those same or could have. I don't say everything is up for debate, but could have at the very least the option of proposing a bill.
I think I just want to get this out here. I think some people might say to you, well, the government is already made up of people who are for the people and by the people because they're people in our society. I think the important thing is that your idea is to bring people in, I don't want to say unwillingly, but in a sense, bring people in who aren't maybe informed in all the policies and but they also don't have to wheel and deal with anyone to get their voice
right
made.
They're
just people. They're everyday people, and they're going to be they'd be randomly chosen from all walks of life.
Yep.
And they're basically just doing their civic duty for a certain amount of
Yeah.
time.
And I think there would be so many people that would be instantly pumped and excited to be participating in that. Like, of course, there'd be deadbeats for sure.
Yeah.
So then other questions that
But
you
get
have,
that in politics as
you
well.
get, yeah, you do. I mean, again,
get it
going
all the
through
time.
going through the Senate and everybody that's in it, just the little bit of research that I've done, you have an entirely mixed bag of people that are participating or that are appointed. So they would get to they would certainly get to vote. They would certainly get to make amendments to bills. They would certainly could be able to propose at least idea for bills. And then what you could do is, if you felt like, all right, you need maybe some more expertise participating in helping guide them or whatever. Like, you could have people, like, let's say somebody wanted to propose a bill on engineering.
Right.
Like hydro engineering, for instance. And a lot of people liked it. Well, then you could have, presumably those people are already in the government, in the cabinet, right? Like
or at least
the energy, the minister of energy, for instance. They would be able to.
I don't think they know anything, do they? But actually,
A lot of them don't. Yeah, you find out like
they just
like
appointed?
Minister of Finance, Chrystia
No.
Freeland. She was a journalist.
Right. So I think though that when a bill, and again, I actually don't know what I'm saying. I would think that when a bill is proposed, if it has something to do with engineering, that there would be specialists and professionals in that field who, like, studies must have been done to say that the bill was the right thing to do. So,
or studies
the
are
layman or the draftee. I don't know what we want.
or
to call
studies
these
are
people.
procured. Like they say, we need to do a study.
They would in theory have access to all that
Yes.
information.
Yes.
But there is something to be said for how they like, you can't just hand someone a bill and say vote on this.
No, you'd have to construct it in such a way that people would be accountable. So you'd have to know that they actually read things. I don't know how much.
I don't think you can force that. There's nobody's making making sure the House of Commons has read them.
No. What was the point? Yeah. What was the point that you were making though?
Well, just because you were talking about, I thought you were trying to say something about having somebody there to help explain the bill to the draftee, who is more or less a layman.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you want people to help them, work through the language of the bills as well as to construct either bill proposals or bills themselves.
Let's not even get into the draftees proposing bills,
right?
Because I think that's extra complicated. Because I think you do have to have a certain level of political acumen.
Well, what you have to do is have an idea. That's it, I think, really. You just have to have an idea. Okay. And what I really like about the idea of a drafted government is that they're going to be doing the things that we actually want. They're going to, if I'm in charge, I'm getting stuff fixed around here. That's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about infrastructure. I'm worried about electricity. I'm worried about these basic things. I'm not going to be concentrating on like wars and stuff like that,
but then again, that goes to then maybe they should be on a provincial level and not a federal level.
Yeah.
Could
be, certainly.
Do you think I guess if they're just voting on a bill, do you have an example of like a bill was in the House of Commons that me being drafted into this would have to vote on? Do you have anything? Like, I want to understand.
Well, every bill, like the online censorship bill, for instance.
But don't they usually have like,
to bring it back to
bring a bill in, but there's like 100 different things in it. Like you're not always just voting on one thing. You're voting on a bill that has 80, 90 points in it, and they are all like, when you look at I don't know, was it like, I want to say bill like C-52 or something. It had a whole bunch of shit in it. And it wasn't simply like, it wasn't, hey, should we do this? Yes or no. It was, should we do these 50 things? Yes or no. And you had to take the whole thing or none of it.
Let's see if...
So the bills get ratified over and over because somebody says, oh, no, I don't like that thing being in there. And you also get a lot of stuff where I think politicians or parties will sneak things in to a bill that's like 150 pages long, but there'll be one line item in it that's, terrible, but it's hidden.
Yeah. I've never looked at a bill, so I don't know.
I don't think a bill is one thing, and I think that's important.
Okay, so here's Bill C-63, the Online Harms Act, aiming to enhance online safety by regulating. So this brings our original conversation into the mix by regulating harmful content and holding online platforms accountable. Introduced
those are the platforms, at least, not the people.
Introduced in February 20. Well, which is like that's a
but
way.
They don't go after individuals.
That's a way
they
of
go after companies.
But that's a way of doing it en masse. So
Yeah.
so that makes it so that you don't even have the option of, because you can say whatever you want. It just doesn't even get out there. Like, so you basically get eliminated from public discourse. Introduced in February 2024, the bill seeks to protect Canadians, particularly children, from online hate and harmful material. Key objectives of Bill C-63. The Act aims to safeguard Canadians from harmful online content. All right, that's the same thing. It seeks to hold online it's just repeating the same stuff.
Yeah.
Establishment of the digital scope of the Act would apply to various online media, Facebook, Twitch, Pornhub. These platforms be required to implement measures to reduce exposure to 7 categories of harmful content and maintain transparency about their efforts. Free speech concerns. So these are some criticisms. Critics argue that the act could lead to over-censorship and infringe on freedom of expression. University of Ottawa law professor Michael Geist expressed concerns about the bill's broad definitions and the extensive powers granted to the Digital Safety Commission. Privacy issues. There are apprehensions regarding the enforcement of age verification technologies, particularly their potential impact on user privacy. Blah, blah, blah. Impact on content providers. Okay, so the Bill C-63 has not progressed through the legislative process because it was prorogued Parliament.
That was circumstantial, though. That was
so it's still there. So whenever
they'll
the government,
get back to it
whenever Parliament returns,
Um,
so we'd have to. I know. I've watched a bunch of videos talking about how you wouldn't be able to use the kinds of language that we talked about earlier. That would be potentially problematic.
Mm-hmm. That's okay. That's neither here nor there. What I'm trying to find out is what's in a bill, and maybe we're getting too into the weeds.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Well,
I want to approach this from a realistic point of view, and I also want to approach it from, how many people in your mind are part of this.
Well, my
it would have to be enough people to actually.
My one version I thought would be 210 seats. So this is based on the idea of, but you think, there's 10 provinces, 11 provinces.
But all you need is enough people to offset. Like when you throw 210 seats in there, you're basically making a
new branch of government.
But
you need enough representation.
A branch of government of people who, I don't want to use the word uneducated, but they're not They don't have political.
Great.
But maybe they don't understand what it takes to get a bill passed.
Great.
I guess I see
great.
your point. Okay.
Great. All of that is great. And I hesitate making this.
I think it needs to be enough to offset the balance of power, but not enough to take the balance of power.
Well, they wouldn't. What you want is their participation to be balanced so that everything
so
that
10 people is in the House of Commons is what, 328?
In that,
how many people are in the House of Commons?
House of Commons, it's around 300, I think, or high 200s.
When I think about it, you're going to have, let's say it's 210 people. You've got 210 people from all walks of life. And
338 seats in the House of Commons. which changes. It all changes, right? They're
I guess my
constantly
question
adjusting
is,
things.
do you think it would actually change things? Because aren't they at the end of the day?
My hope is
gonna
that it would
vote
change
with the
things.
party that they originally were voting for in the first place. Aren't those people inevitably going to get sucked in to the political system and end up being like, well, I don't know, that guy voted for it.
Yeah, and
I
I was talking about this the other night with a friend, and he was saying, and people are going to come to them and offer them money.
Well, yeah,
right? So
I thought of that too. You got
right, but that's already an issue. First of all, that's already a problem. Mm-hmm. So you
they
can't
could be anonymous. I don't know.
I feel like I feel like not.
But there has to be something
because the general public has to trust this thing, and if they're anonymous, that immediately completely undermines
also,
trust.
What do you do for somebody who they don't want to be a publicly?
So you can. I think there's all sorts of ways again that you can do it. One of the options would be that you could actually decline the draft nomination. Potentially, you could request, or you could
I feel like
at
it
least
has to be anonymous. I'm starting to feel.
Okay, maybe let me just tell you. So the reason why I thought 210 seats was based on just math, actually, based on abolishing the Senate and how much the senators, according to my research, make $150,000 basically a year. So if you abolish that frees up $15 million every year. So I kind of was like, how do you...
So this is predicated on abolishing the Senate?
No.
Oh, okay.
But this is what... Now it's not. Now it's not. But my initial concept, my initial proof of concept was based on abolishing the Senate.
Right.
But you could actually...
That would be kind of cool, actually. Abolish the Senate and then just have these people voting on what...
Or shrink the Senate down. So I still have even... So if you have 210 seats and everybody gets $2,000 like as a stipend or whatever you want to say.
How much?
$2,000 a month. $2,000 a month.
Right.
Which is not like so much that.
No, I'm presuming
and it could be
that
more.
They can keep their full-time job while they're doing
this.
So
that's coming back to we were talking about that earlier, looking at how often the Senate is actually in session.
Right.
62 sessions a year.
Right.
And
they don't necessarily have to be.
And there's no sessions in January at all, at least in certain years. There's 0 sessions in January. There was 1 in July and August in total. 1 session. So they've already constructed it so that they have the cushiest job ever.
Right.
So it works very well that they could participate in something like this.
Are senators appointed for life still?
Up till 75. Now it's 70. It got changed. And the whole idea of the Senate was based on aristocracy.
Yeah.
Like they were considered to be like a more evolved group of people
yeah.
who really understand the complexity of issues.
Right.
And I think do we even have to make the argument about how outdated that notion is?
Maybe they're a little more informed, but I certainly don't think they're anything.
So anyways, you could shrink the Senate down to free up some money, or you just find the money somewhere else. But so you have 210 seats. Everybody makes $2,000 a month, and that's $5 million.
Okay.
So let's say
financials aside, do you have any concern? Let's say we abolished the Senate,
and then what they can do. So you know how you have job interviews where you have to read. Or watch a whole video and then it proves.
Yeah.
So you could do shit like that. So they could, if their job is prohibitive of them participating in the session in real time, then the sessions could be posted online. They have to watch it. They're 3 hours roughly. I think, generally speaking, at least the ones that I saw were all roughly that or less. So they find the time to do it when they can. They review the videos and
what is it they're watching?
The sessions. The
House of Commons sessions. What sessions?
Well, I don't know if they would the House of Commons have their own sessions, but I'm talking about the Senate sessions. So they have what are called sitting days.
Wait a minute. I thought we abolished the Senate in this conversation.
We did. I'm just kind of still going off that structure that there's these 3-hour sitting days where topics are being discussed. So let's say of the 210.
But you've brought 210 people into a room, and what are they discussing?
They're discussing. I think they have to be further down the chain. So maybe what they get is something from the MPs. So everything still starts with the House of Commons.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like what it already presently does.
Yeah.
And then they get some kind of presentation from the House of Commons. Either they
Is that what happens now to the Senate, or doesn't the bill just get like, here, vote on this?
It's a back and forth. There can be many. The bills go through constant process of.
Oh, it doesn't like
writing and rewriting.
So the House of Commons doesn't say, "All right, we voted on this. It's passed. Here, Senate, vote on this."
No, it's not like
They
only a
look at it
final
and then they
version.
send
No.
it back?
Yeah. So the Senate. I think there'll be numerous points along the way that the bills are getting written and rewritten. It's going back and forth between
The Senate and the House of Commons.
Yeah.
So the senators are looking at the bill and they're determining what they like and they don't like in it, and then they're sending it back to the House of Commons for a
I think
they're
so.
saying, we're not going to vote on this yet.
Yeah, and I
Send
think
this
they'll
back.
make
Yeah?
suggestions. They make what I read is that typically they make suggestions for revisions and additions.
I could see how it would potentially slow down the process, but it also might make it a little more honest.
Well, that's
Right?
the
Which is the
point.
Yeah.
The point is, first of all, to make it more honest, more transparent.
Yeah.
Bring the people, giving the people, like I think most people feel like the government is so far removed from.
I have no say. I have.
Yeah.
What can I do?
What can you do?
And the voting system is such that, because of the lack of proportional voting, half the time you don't feel like you have a say in anything because the guy you really want doesn't have a chance of getting in anyway.
Couldn't you imagine the excitement, like of the draft?
Yeah.
Like that would be awesome.
I think as many people would dread it as
sure, but if you have like a deferral or a declination, is that a word? Declination?
Yeah.
Like if you can decline an invite?
Yeah.
So either a deferral or you can decline. If you have that in place, and maybe there's like certain prerequisites for those things. But what an exciting process.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would love it.
Yeah.
If I got drafted, I'm not going to go and run for MP. I'm not going to do it. And I'm not getting appointed to the Senate.
Wow.
That ain't happening. But man, if I got drafted into this body of government, I would consider it such a privilege and an honor.
I can tell you who wouldn't like it. All the people in politics. Because they've worked really hard to get to that point, and you just got drafted in.
And that might be.
How long do you get to do this for?
So here's a trick: is you still need at least some of those people. No, I'm talking about those power hungry, ambitious people. You still need those people.
Why? Because,
for instance, war. Right. You need people who are like sharks. You still need those people in government. You still need sharks in government.
But do you see these people having an effect on?
Like when Trump said, the stuff that he's been saying about Canada as the 51st state, and like I was terrified when he made a couple of statements early on that I was like, are we going to be going to war?
Right.
Or dealing with an incredibly aggressive government that is going to be trying to take water, resources,
I think that's much more likely.
Territory, whatever. They're going to be doing it through legislation. So you need people in the government, in our government, that are going to have that kind of mindset. And that, I think, unfortunately, that only comes with people who are very ambitious in terms of power and finance. So you need to. So the point of this is that they still need to be incentivized to participate in government. So you still have to make, the House of Commons and the Senate appealing. You still have to make these positions appealing. They still have to retain an appeal. So I want to say they want to be able to feel that there is a little bit of fudging they can do to make things work for themselves. I don't know, but well,
I think most of the time, surely they're going to be voting for things that are going to improve their life, right?
Or creating legislation that will.
Well, even if they're not part of the creation process, let's just say they're only part of the voting process. They're going to look at things and they're going to say, they're going to get the bill and they're going to go, well, that's going to make my life a little shittier. I'm not voting for that.
Oh, who are we talking about?
Your draftees.
Right. Okay. I thought you meant the sharks.
And then they're going to, or they're going to get a bill and they're going to say, oh, Look at that. So something that's been bugging me a lot lately is the doctors, the fact that every party is promising to get more, guaranteed a doctor. Well, it's not that. That's not the problem. The problem is that people aren't becoming doctors, general GPs, right? Because the government has made it unappealing.
Yeah.
Really unappealing.
The government is constantly
right?
making choices that are not in the existing citizenry's best interest. For instance, Doug Ford proposed bringing immigrants in to solve labor problems. And I had a reference. I might post it online afterwards. But that's such a common solution. That's in my sector I'm talking about.
Right.
I'm like, how about this?
Right.
How about pay people more?
Right.
How about that?
Right.
Then you suddenly have all these people that are going to want to do those jobs, want to go to school for those jobs because they can make more freaking money. But instead, they bring in people from other people so they don't have to raise the wages or
the companies can't afford to pay you more.
Yeah. So the solutions are never the solutions, or very, very rarely the solutions that the people actually want.
Well, yeah, they're mostly to help the people who already have money keep that money and make more of it.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Like paying you more money to do your job doesn't help.
That takes money away from them.
That construction industry.
Right.
The people at the top, that doesn't help them.
No.
Because then their stocks go down.
Yeah. And they have to pay more for stuff now.
Right.
So the idea with the drafted government is that would change. You know, they would start actually coming up with like if we can propose things, then we can, they'd be voted down, but also the people would be saying, can't we just pay the nurses more?
Right. Right.
Why are we not paying the nurses more?
Yeah.
Why are we doing that?
Or why are we paying them more when they go to the private sector? And the government is giving money to the
immediately
private clinics to pay the nurses more.
You must know that immediately healthcare gets better.
Yeah.
Right away.
Right.
You got to know that a drafted body of government, healthcare, education get better right away.
Yeah.
Right away, you know those two things get improved.
Right. And those are two of the biggest
things
going on in Canada.
Again, this is what I'm saying, is that the things that we actually are concerned about, the kinds of solutions that we're actually hoping happen, those will actually be presented on the table. The solutions that we don't like, more immigrants, and all the immigrants that I'm working with are complaining about the immigrants. It's amazing. Every day, I'm not every day, but like I would say it happens at least once every 2 weeks that a guy says to me, I don't understand why these fucking Trudeau, they just let all the fucking immigrants just keep coming. I'm like, but he's been here 10 years, so he doesn't see himself that way.
But that's also human nature, I think, is,
Well, what we know is that there's been more lately. So it's time to
and they've shut the tap.
Right, and so now
universities are shutting down because they don't have their international students, which is a problem.
Okay, well, they got to figure that out some other way.
Yeah.
They got to figure that out some other way.
I know.
We have to protect the Canadian citizens. We have to give them more money. We have to get them better wages.
Yeah.
Like you go on the job board.
But it's funny because earlier you made the argument about how well everyone is doing. We all have food. We all have a TV.
Yep.
So where is the enough line?
Well,
you need to get paid more, and I don't disagree that you shouldn't be paid more. I think you should be, but when do you say I'm making enough money?
It's so complicated. First of all, standard of living is always relative, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Like
so relative
your standard of living. We're sitting here in your basement apartment that you rent. Sorry, it's not a basement apartment. The basement of your apartment that you rent, which by some people's viewpoint would say, "Fuck, that guy's living the life."
Sure. Like, again, I just got back from a trip in Costa Rica, which was paid for on credit, by the way.
Right.
So that we didn't have any money for that trip. That was just credit.
Yeah.
So we're further in debt, not just that debt, but just more debt. My mother was a single mom with 2 sons, working at Miracle Food Mart as a store manager.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's possible now that she would,
Good God,
who
no.
owned a house and a car,
Incredible that
owned
she
a
was
house
able
and a
to
car.
do
Now I know she got help from her family sometimes. We talked about it, but like,
Yeah. You
my mom's
even if you owned your house outright now and it wasn't even a crazy expensive house with property taxes that weren't, I don't know, mine are like $900 a month or something.
right.
Even if you didn't have all of that, you would not be able to afford to
No.
even pay.
There's no way a
property
single
taxes.
mother working at Miracle Food Mart or No Frills as a manager right now could possibly own a house, have a car, and be raising 2 kids.
Yeah.
And I know she went on vacation.
Right.
I remember as a kid her going on vacation.
But even if she did own her house, she still wouldn't be able to keep
So
paying for
the
it.
standard of living thing is weird because, like, yeah, everybody's got TVs and stuff, but TVs are cheaper. Like, there's certain things that are cheap,
Yeah.
but like certain things like houses, like it's like I'd have to win the lottery right now to, I don't know what would
And
people.
even if
The
you
only
won
way
the
I'm
lottery, it wouldn't even be.
you might not even be able to afford a fucking house.
Remember
Right.
when you were a kid and
Right.
you'd say, "Man, if I won
$1 million, I know, $1 million that would solve everything.
Not even close. Not even close.
I know all these things are so complicated. Like I know I got
Like,
I
let's
have
say I
a
bought a house. Let's say I don't know how much
the
you
car
like
I
it.
own though is not. I did not buy the car.
No,
I did not buy.
but
None of the
on
cars
other hand is you didn't buy that car.
You know
but
what?
it was a
It's
perk
there's
for
so
your
much
job.
stuff. There is so much stuff now in the world, like the manufacturing, the what's it called, the
Industrial industry.
yeah, but like mass manufacturing, mass
Yeah.
production has made it so that there's so much stuff now. So like
Poor
everybody,
people can own something.
yeah,
that they
because
didn't
there's so
used
much
to.
because the stuff like because they can get things used. You can get a car now for
Right.
you can get the shittiest car now. You could probably get for $200 or for free. Like people are if you have a Corolla from '99, you probably can't even sell that. Probably somebody if you could, it would probably be like $200.
Yeah.
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 And it's like if nobody's gonna buy your TV off you, even though it's a TV that 10 years ago would have cost $3,000. Now you just have to leave it on the street
Yep.
because stuff is cheap.
Yeah.
But like important things like traveling and feeling like upward mobility, being home ownership, groceries, feeding yourself in a way that isn't just like craft dinner, rice and
Yeah. When you're not eating, what is it?
You
called?
know-
super. When food is super processed.
so
food.
yes, everybody has their lights, everybody has their water,
Right.
everybody has these basics, everybody's got internet for the most part and a phone, but that's kind of like it almost seems like it's by design. Like no, they're good. It's like if you believe in conspiracy theories, it's like
I think
just give them all the stuff that'll keep them occupied so they don't look up
But
and
even if you
realize
don't-
none of the stuff that they actually have.
I think there was a period of time where everybody was saying, if I just had water and electricity, I'd be happy. I'd be fine. And then the goalpost is always moving for
Yes.
human beings.
Yes.
Let's admit that. But I also think the reason we have time to talk about all of the things that you were saying, why are we focusing on all of these things as a small group of people? And sorry for going back around to this. But you were saying like,
were you already on? Was like this was really on your mind?
no. It's just
It's
sparked something. Like, well, I had thought of this earlier, and I didn't get to say it, which was the reason we have time to discuss the needs of such a
Right.
small group of people is because we have running
Right.
water
Yeah.
and heat and electricity.
people aren't
and
worried
all the
about
things.
just putting
Right.
food on the table
Right.
anymore.
So
yeah.
now we can actually focus on the things that small groups might be being discriminated against or feeling left out of. And yeah, everybody gets on about, oh, boo-hoo. People need to just, be okay with it. And it's a very old belief. And I dare say
sorry,
very,
what's an old belief?
this whole idea of not worrying about other people's feelings. I hear a lot of this now. Why should everybody's so sensitive now. Why the fuck should I, everybody should be responsible for themselves. That's, to me, is a belief that, for one thing, it's very male. because I remember growing up, and my dad was never like this at all, but I remember the impressions I got from the men or boys around me was, don't show emotion, don't, if your feelings are hurt, don't express that. And now people are suddenly feeling safe to actually express it, and a lot of people are saying, I shouldn't care about how you feel. It's not.
I'm not
job.
Listening to you at all right now. I'm sorry, because I'm sorry. I think I get your point, because I want to ask you about. I hate that we're back on this topic, but like what about the transgender sports athletes?
Yeah, that is
exactly
so
right.
Complicated.
So back to fuzzy. Back to everybody's got their line. So your line is trans participating in female sports leagues, right? But like for other people, it's a little further back,
right,
where they see a problem with, and it's related to thought and language.
Yeah,
like there is a relationship between the thoughts that I have and the way that I speak, and it's tight. And when you're asking people to change their language, their public language, you're actually directly, a lot of the time you're directly asking people to think differently too. But forget that part. Let's just say they're only asking for change of language. That ties to the thought. Mm-hmm. You're asking people to think differently indirectly as well. But I just wanted to make that point that like you have your line as well. That's like, okay, well, I guess
but first of all,
a little more complicated than I want to admit.
No, I admitted that it's complicated, and it's always complicated. But also that when it comes to sports, again, that's and we can just go in circles and circles and circles because
finish the point, and then I want to get back to the government thing.
I think that it's a bit
then
different
we'll
when it comes
break.
to sports because it's a very physical thing.
Right. That's the line.
But
Actually, you kind of making my point for me. Is the line should be don't steal, don't assault, don't molest, don't threaten, don't physically threaten harm in these ways that are important to a person's ability to feel or not feel important to the person's health of body and being able to house themselves, nourish themselves, their families, etc. When you're speaking, they might not like it, it might feel hurtful, blah blah blah, but they can still go about their business without any problem at all. Right? Violence, physical, that you have to draw the line somewhere. And I think that sports line that's so complicated that suddenly stops you, that's kind of a great example of a great metaphor for the complicated
I don't disagree with you, but I
of where that line should be.
No, but also my problem comes in because of technology, essentially. That's the only reason I feel like we have to police this now, is because it's just too easy. It's too easy to spread hate in a way that it's never been possible before. Ever. Even for, like, fucking Hitler.
I think more importantly than that is that we have to evolve. The human beings have to evolve with technology. So what's happening with social media, we're kind of in the infancy of, it's like the wheel and fire. Mm-hmm. Like we kind of probably had to make a whole bunch of mistakes at the beginning and set a whole bunch of things on fire before we suddenly
we had to put a law on how you used fire.
Yes, but we know
we're doing right now, and maybe the pendulum can swing back. But for now, I think it has to swing this way.
That actually wasn't the point that I was trying to make. The point I was really trying to make is that I don't think we understand what technology is doing to us. That's the point I'm trying to make, is that it's changing our brains. Yeah. You know, I took the subway the other day for the first time in I don't know how long, and every single person, there was like one out of maybe 20 people that wasn't doing this. Mm-hmm. Including the 75-year-old, whatever. What?
Including the driver.
Yeah, probably. But like, this is all I saw.
I know.
That's it. So we obviously have a problem.
Yeah.
And the way that we're interacting now is emblematic of the problem that we're having adjusting to this new tech. So I think more importantly than like creating legislation saying people can't think or express is more of we have to maybe come up with like, maybe it goes into school, maybe it becomes part of school or something happens where people can learn how to integrate with tech. We're not doing that right now.
No.
It's just a wild west right now where it's like everybody's drinking alcohol like they're binge like they're alcoholics.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's like everybody, like 95% of people right now are alcoholics and nobody's kind of doing anything about it.
Right.
Right?
Because they don't even see, we're just starting to really see the problem.
Right. So I think that's probably the foundational thing that needs to be solved. I think the point that you're trying to make actually comes after. And in fact creates a bigger problem that is only just going to have to be addressed later on anyways. Eventually, well, like what happens when we get to Neuralink?
Yeah.
Right? Where actually our thoughts are just, so now you're reading my thoughts. There's nothing I can do about it. Right? So at that point, you're going to know all the racist stuff, I think. So at that point, it's like, okay, he has these racist, misogynist thoughts, but he's kind of like still, working with his coworkers that are black, Asian, whatever, immigrants, whatever. And, he hates women a lot, but, he doesn't really beat anybody. Like at a certain point, you start realizing, okay, well, he has these thoughts and feelings that come and go depending on the day. Cause I do. I hate people all the time.
Right.
But
you don't express it online. Find some freaking tolerance.
But I'm not online. I'm not on social media.
But a lot of people are.
They are.
And there are.
But I got off.
I know.
Because I knew what the danger of it was. It's not that I don't have those thoughts and feelings.
But we have to police the people who
don't.
That's
the wrong. It's the wrong answer. That's the wrong answer.
I think yours is the wrong.
I'm a little tired. Can we take a little break?
Yeah.
Okay, and then I want to come back to government. Okay, we're gonna have a little break and then. Okay. Well, I guess I just want to sell people a bit more on this idea. First of all, the benefits of it, but also the plausibility of it.
I mean, not to say that we don't need to keep talking about it. I think we've made some really good points. I think if you want to really sell it now, do we need to get into specifics of how it can benefit?
Well, we've talked about education and
a little bit
and healthcare, which I think we both can.
We didn't get too deeply in on that, but I mean, do you want to say like give examples of if this bill was here and you could vote it down and like I don't know, maybe that's
yeah. I mean, just the fact that regular human beings would be participating in the drafting of legislature and focusing the government towards the things that the people actually care about and the solutions that they actually want. That's the part that I think is so important. But again, also getting this other group of people in there, the people that aren't ambitious and aren't driven to power, aren't driven by money. I was wanting to make this point is that like right now, basically society is controlled by people who work with paper, who work with money and with law. Yeah. And they're dictating everything. And people who actually make things, this is a very personal argument, but like I make stuff and none of I don't get to participate in the process because I don't work with paper or money. Right. Or legal paper or cash. So, and I'm not interested in those things. Like they don't motivate me to. I'm motivated by creating things.
There's no one representing you.
There's nobody representing me. And people like me, we don't try to get power. We're busy doing the things that we want to do, like creating the things that we want to make and trying to help feed our families and stuff. So those people just aren't part of the process right now. And I think, you go to the bar with your buddies and you sit around having conversation. Everybody's got great ideas, but they're not doing anything about it because it's like to run for office. Like you got to have a particular mindset to do that. Like that's a massive commitment.
I wanted to say, and I might be wrong on this, but maybe you know, when you're an MP in the House of Commons and your party puts forth a bill, I've heard, and I think this is true, if you were to vote against it, they would kick you out of the party.
Yeah.
So what this does is it gives an opportunity to a group of people to vote the way they want to vote.
Right.
Instead of having to toe the party line.
Yeah.
Which to me it's insane to me that you get kicked out of the party for having an opinion that's different from that goes against all the concepts of inclusion.
Yeah. Apparently, actually, that's a real big problem with the Canadian system. Like, it's less of a problem with the American system.
Like
yeah,
you
because
can vote against your party and they won't toss you.
Apparently, I don't really know too much about that, but supposedly the party leaders have way more authority in the Canadian system.
Yeah, I've heard that too. That basically you just vote however the party leaders tells you.
Yeah, and you'll have, out of the, let's say it's 210 draftees, how many of those people are kind of either not party affiliated or kind of like they're not party idealists? They just kind of vote because that's the other thing is like when you voted for a person based on kind of like a general concept of what you think the party is.
Yeah,
right.
You know
it's such an unformed thought about what you're going to get back with your vote. It's really like based on just like a general intuition that the NDP is going to be better for right, but you don't actually really know what they're doing.
What's even crazier is, when I was sitting there and I was telling you about this on the phone when we were talking, that I got into the voting booth and I was like, oh wait, who are these people?
You don't even know who they are.
And my first thought was, okay, I better find out about this specific person's politics. And now you and I are having this conversation, and we're talking about how they just have to vote the party leaders way anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Which once again is
so it doesn't even matter.
It keeps watering down, even if the if these people are going into getting elected, the MPs are getting elected because they want to have a voice. They're not even getting to have a voice,
right?
Because they have to do whatever their leader says.
Yeah.
So really, all you're getting is one person.
Yeah.
Instead of I would rather have dissent within the party, and you get to vote however you want with no repercussions,
right?
And because then at least I would know people are voting with their conscience.
And then when you hear
their greed, I don't know.
When you hear MPs talk, you hear how it's all like they all say the same things. They're all using the same language. So speaking to your point about they have their marching orders, which comes from the top,
right? And
everybody's just saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Like I was, there was an MP that I can't remember his name at the moment, but there was a clip that's going viral right now. He's outside, I believe, of the Russian embassy, Charlie Angus, and he's advocating for the Ukrainian situation, for the Ukrainian people, the Ukrainian government, and in the war against Russia. And do
you know what party he's?
No, I don't actually. But he was calling everybody basically that wasn't a Ukraine supporter a fascist or a Putin puppet.
Okay.
And it's like that kind of language is insane, but you hear it all the time, people being referred to as Putin puppets and these kinds of like jingoistic, watered down
that's a sign of the times we're living in, where get called. People go right to the extreme. It's throwing around the term Nazi all the time. Oh, that person's a Nazi. No, they're not. Maybe they've got some opinions you don't agree with, but
our form of government is conducive to that. It makes it so that people want to speak or feel like they need to speak in these kinds of terms, because that's how you maintain your MP status. That's how you maintain your position in the party, is by repeating, just the talking points of your government and like whatever the you know.
But the government's not calling people fascist.
This guy was a MP.
But maybe he was just expressing his personal opinion.
But clearly, you hear it throughout the party. No, he could have been. I'm not saying.
Going with this,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So he's not allowed to just have a personal opinion?
Of course he is. Of course he is. We're talking about better government here.
Sorry.
All right. Yeah.
Okay. You kind of lost me on how that guy was. How that represents.
I think I lost my way a little bit on it too. The point I was trying to make is that when you hear MPs speak, you can tell that they're not speaking from their own thoughts, their own.
Well,
mind.
they're not allowed to say anything that goes against what.
When you hear repeated talking points and phrasing that is just common to every single one of them, you know that it's a formalized.
Mm-hmm. Well, this
position that has been determined by the top.
Yeah.
And now they're all just marching out the orders they've been given.
They're also, and it's not just that, they're also trying to walk that line so that they can stay employed. Whereas if you draft people in, they don't need to do that.
Yeah.
They don't need to worry. I mean, maybe to some degree they have to worry about offending people because nobody wants 10,000 people sending nasty messages to them online. And they may not have, and this is where might be a bit of a problem with the draftee system, I think, which is how do you maintain your personal life as somebody who's been drafted into government and is going to go back into regular life and not sort of have the protections of being.
There's all sorts of complications with being a draftee, like your pressure from your community. You know, we talked about corruption.
That's why part of me almost feels like it could be anonymous to a certain degree. I'm not sure how, but it would be nice if it was. I don't know. There's no question. There is a very complicated idea, and putting it into practice would be very complicated. But I think the benefits of it are
far outweigh the cons. And you're already dealing with all these problems. Like that's just human society. Like you're not. It's not like you create this new branch of government and it's somehow going to be exempt or protected. Like they're not. They're going to have the same.
I would love there to
same
be a
challenges. Yeah, it would be interesting if there was a pilot
where the results don't actually affect. Well, I guess you couldn't really do it, but I would be curious to see how it can.
But so, like that's done all the time. Like I know there was a UBI pilot test that's been done, universal basic income. Like, that's how you do things, right? Like you try a thing out, you create a.
What happened to that? Sorry to get off topic. That was a good idea, I thought.
Well, I guess it's still sort of in the process of trying to figure out how it works and how could it work, and you know I know that there is investigate like this. I know that there are these pilot runs being done.
20 years ago, and obviously nothing's.
20 years ago, really?
I feel like I've been hearing about it for a long time. Maybe I'm wrong. Time changes when you're old.
Yeah, well, there was a point that I wanted to make from before.
Sorry.
So they could do a number of questions, such as terms. Like, is it just 4 years? Mm-hmm. And do they just serve a 4-year term, or is there a possibility or a requirement to do a second term?
I don't think so. I think the reason this works is because you cannot get embedded in the political system. When you're a draftee, you're only there for a certain amount of time, and the idea anyway is that the way you vote is based on how you feel.
Yep.
And not about appeasing anyone or towing the line, any of that stuff.
Yeah, and I want
to get into a second term, it almost starts to feel like.
And I wanted to make that point is that there's going to be all sorts of people that will be drafted that just aren't political.
Yeah.
They're
and they're just going to read it and go, oh, I don't think that's
and they're not coming at it from PC, NDP, liberal, because they might not even vote. They might not, or their vote oscillates from party to party depending on the year. Like, so there's none of that pressure, at least. That would make things easier. There was something else. So you think just 4 years done?
Yeah, I don't think you don't want any incentives to keep people around and for them to try and monetize this, which is, I think, ultimately what happens.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially in politics across the board, somehow it gets into, you might even go in with the best of intentions, but then somebody says, well, you could, it's the slippery slope.
Which is going to happen. So,
but you can really minimize it
by
having it a shorter term.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you do 4 years, but you only do every other year. Even like it's a different group over, like, you know what I mean? Like, you're not 4 years in a row.
No, I'm not getting what you mean.
Well, because yeah, no, that wouldn't work either. Never mind. Cut that out.
Yeah, no, we don't want to get too complicated, right? You want to keep it fairly simple. I guess one of the things I was considering is whether you don't want necessarily it to coincide with the government necessarily, like the government schedule. So like the parliamentary
like elections, you mean?
Yeah, like the parliamentary term, for instance. We do have a schedule.
Yeah, but
like for instance,
how often is it? Do they stay?
The last 44th Parliament was November 22nd, 2021 to January 6, 2025. So let's assume that the next parliament, the 45th. I know it won't be because it's prorogued right now, but let's say it's from January 6, 2025 to 2029. Mm-hmm. Do you have your
a whole new crop of people coming in? Is that what you mean?
At this? Does it coincide with the next parliament, or do you have it sort of
be easier?
Well, but
logistically speaking, maybe. Why not?
I don't know. I don't know why it would be easier necessarily, but if it was offset, so it's like if it's in the middle, then their run coincides with two different parliaments. Mm-hmm. So two different leaderships. Mm-hmm. So that there's a benefit there in the sense that they're not necessarily always working with the same people mm-hmm. and the same government, mm-hmm. right? True. Which I think to me, intuitively, I can see how that would, again, mitigate some of the problems and help keep the draft, this body more pure in its focus and intention.
Mm-hmm. There also needs to be some sort of rules.
I love the idea. Sorry, I just love the idea. Can you imagine this got implemented in a draft? Like, it would be a big event. It would be as big as the election for the prime minister, if not more. It would be really. I think it would be, a national holiday kind of thing, like where people would be tuned in, clued in, because anybody could be voted in. And
see,
I could imagine that would really galvanize.
I want it to be very. I don't want it to be a big public event.
I feel like a celebratory quality around it would be really. I
don't know.
Energizing and exciting
it has to be as. I don't want to use the word mundane, but the idea is you're just doing your civic duty. You're not special. Nobody's celebrating you. You're just doing the right thing. That's all. And the minute you turn it into a celebration, it turns into celebrity. And it just has to be doing your job. Right? Like a jury. Like you said, there's no...
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Juries, and the other thing about juries is people aren't allowed to contact them. The lawyers can't call the jurors, right? So it has to be the same. No anybody affiliated with any political party can talk to these people. They can't send them a fucking email. They can't invite them for lunch.
So what kind of people are you talking about here?
What do you mean?
That cannot...
Anybody associated with a political party,
you're not talking about MPs and senators.
I'm saying they can't talk to them outside of work. I don't think you want like liberals and conservative MPs contacting person trying to influence how they're going to vote. They have to be able to just.
So there'd be like a very formal
wall
between any kinds of interactions between
Yeah.
the Senate MPs, the Senate and the House of Commons, and this other body.
Yeah.
Like they
because
should not have, except in the
they
course
shouldn't
of
go to
their.
meetings with them. They shouldn't.
Try not to hit this. You're
Their
bouncing
their
the
job
thing.
is to just be there to vote. So there is no reason for anyone to talk to them within the political parties, right? They have to be the people.
And can you imagine? So you're a drafted person.
Mm-hmm.
What would you need or want over those 4 years to feel safe? For instance,
Yes, absolutely.
What would
I wouldn't want anybody
like you're still living where you're living, your
Yeah.
family, everything is the same. So let's say this draft started this year and you got drafted.
That's
What
really hard.
would you need, like police? Would you need security? Would you
I think you might need some level of security,
Or
which
ma-
is why part of me says it should be anonymous. I'm not.
I
really
don't think
sure.
it can be.
I don't know if
I
it
just
can
think
be
in the
either. I don't
era
think
that
anybody can be anonymous.
the
these
era
days.
that and yeah, but the era that we're living in right now, what everybody wants is more transparency, more access to information. That's the only thing that people feel like is giving them any sense that things are on the up and up. Otherwise, people feel like that's
so
why
how do
people
you
are.
avoid crazies.
You might
getting
might
involved.
write laws around this new body of government that talks about, if you are trying to interfere, like there could be like criminal penalties. I'm just spitballing here, so I'm not.
No, I know.
So criminal penalties
Sure.
for trying to,
Like, do you think I could, if I wanted to, would I be able to
intimidate or harass or any like there? It might be
yeah,
a little
and
bit
those
more
things are all good
severe.
to have, but
It might be more than just like let's say harassment, the standard harassment in the workplace, let's say, that would land you in jail for a year or something. It would be a far more severe penalty for this.
is
let's say.
there-
Like there are you might have to make them a protected class.
Do you think if I wanted to, I could find out an MP's home address easily?
I don't know.
I don't know either, but I think that if you wanted to, you could find out where I live probably easier.
Yes.
And that's the concern,
Yes.
right?
So
how do you shut down all of that information when somebody because normally I think if you enter into politics,
I don't know if
you
it'd be
plan
easier.
these
I don't know
things.
if it'd be any easier to find out where you live than
No?
at an MP. Why would it be easier?
Maybe
Like,
because my information is out there more publicly.
Is it?
I
Where?
don't know.
I mean, like
I don't
they
know.
have health cards and driver's
Yeah,
licenses
yeah.
and homes and etc.
It's tough, man. Like somebody who enters into politics, they're signing up for this. Someone getting drafted into it is not, and I guess that's why you can defer.
So
I could
maybe
see
you
a lot of people with families not wanting to do it. Just
yeah. So
simply
maybe you
because
look
of the
at
crazies.
I don't know if there is legislation regarding juries, but if there is, then you look at and like protections that are
Yeah.
legislated. I mean, if there is, then you look at those and you try to write similar kinds of legislation for this body of government.
I guess so. Yeah.
But that's kind of the biggest concern, I think, is like how do you protect these 200 people
Mhm.
from harassment, threats, bribes,
all
all that stuff.
Yeah.
Again, that all exists already.
Yeah.
So
But
it's
it's
not.
not just simply protecting them without upsetting the balance of their life, because they didn't choose this, right? Like they need to be able to live their lives as normally as possible. That's where it gets tricky.
So do you think a deferment should just be you can just say no?
Choose not to.
Yeah.
I guess so.
Or do you think you should have to make a case?
no, I always find it.
Like with jury duty, you have to make
well, you
a
know, the
case
thing
for
with
why
jury
you can't
duty
do it.
is, the difference is you're actually offering to pay people.
Yes.
Jury duty doesn't do that.
Right.
So a lot of people just see that as
Just lost wages
and jury duty is
excuse me.
every day.
Sorry.
Jury duty is every day.
Right.
Right. It might not seem like it's not taking up years of your life, but it's taking up 2 weeks, which is directly going to interfere with your job. Whereas this This way
So
you can schedule it.
Here's a problem with not being able to have contact with MPs and senators of any kind.
Mm-hmm.
If a draftee would want to propose a bill, for instance, and
There
they
would
don't,
be a process. I think there would have to be a process.
could you imagine what that would be like, and who would be the people?
I guess I don't know enough about how MPs propose a bill, so I don't have a reference. I'm not like draftees proposing bills. To me, is something to work towards. I don't think you start there.
So you're
I think
saying
it's
that
too complicated.
that this would be something that would evolve over a period of
I think
years.
so.
You would start one place, but would you design
I think you
that
would have to have
evolution?
that I think you might need to. You might say
So by year 3,
year 5 even, the next
or
crop,
session 3, let's say, so 12 years.
Yeah, something like that. You'd have to really think on it pretty hard. Again, maybe somebody who has political savvy could see a way of doing this right from the get-go.
Well, the next thing to do would be to talk to some MPs and senators. This
not
is
even necessarily MPs
or
and senators, just
political
somebody
scholars
who,
or
I would
academics.
talk to like poli-sci professors.
Yeah,
and
this
stuff.
here's the other thing that makes me not, which just came to mind, which makes me not like the process, the system that we have. Is I've written probably 10, 12 letters to like sometimes I blast them out to MPs at large. Like I'll hit cabinet ministers, MPs, prime minister, etc., and I don't get any response back at all. And I think the only responses that I've ever gotten was from the prime minister's office, which was just a form letter. Thank you for your. We will.
That's so funny. I've actually written a letter and got a response.
And from my MP, Merritt Stiles, who I've written her. I don't know how many times.
Merritt is your MP?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 3 or 4 times, and
no kidding.
I got a form letter back after like the 3rd or 4th time.
So interesting. But
that's part of what. But
that's also the difference between
frustrates me.
Some like I remember when I lived at Pape and Danforth, I wrote to mine, and we had a correspondence back and forth.
Really,
we were emailing each other back and forth. I would say, "Well, what about this?" and she would reply to me.
So then
that was my counselor, city councilor.
So then,
not my MP, which maybe is
right.
the difference.
Yes. Right? I would say that.
Yeah,
I would bet you that's a big difference. Yeah. Like in terms of.
Yeah, I think that's.
I remember Rob Ford all the time. He was a city councilor, right?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure he was a councilor, and he used to talk about how he would always answer every phone call and every email. Yeah, but I think he was operating at the city level. So another question regarding like how does the drafted body of government exist is there, like all the MPs' emails and phone numbers are publicly available, and same with the senators. You can they're on their websites and stuff, and you
one of their phones.
Yeah, well, they're working working numbers, they're office numbers, right?
Yeah.
So does the drafted?
No, nobody needs to get in touch with them. Why does
so you really isolate them, right?
Yeah,
you really protect them and isolate them.
Absolutely, there's no reason for anyone to talk to them publicly and
I wonder
privately.
if you could maybe posthumously release their information, like they're anonymous while they're serving, and then
what for?
Well, you talked about the anonymity being important.
No, I know, but even if they were anonymous, why would you need to release it posthumously?
Because that would bring the trust part. At some point it has to be known that these are real people, really serving, actually doing this thing. You need to know that this is a real thing and that it's not just bots.
Right.
It's not just AI, or it's just not MPs in disguise, or who knows what. If it's anonymous, the possibilities are endless about the kinds of shenanigans that could be happening. So at some point, the question, but then it would also, but that would be their onus, their responsibility to keep themselves private. But let's say they were anonymous while they were serving, and then the moment the new, the next session was elected, then the names are released.
I guess it depends on how paranoid you want to get.
Anyways, there are some, that's one option. There's some things to look at there, but that definitely is a big concern. That would be one of the primary concerns, is how to protect these people, how to isolate them so that they don't feel the pressure or don't receive pressure or threat from their communities or interested parties.
Yeah.
And you feel like $2,000, I could see it being more, but like just spitballing, does $2,000 seem like,
I mean,
you're doing 5 sessions a month?
Yeah. It's
for 3-4 hours that you're online.
It gets really tough. Could you, in your job now, not work for 5 days out of every month and your employer be okay with that?
I could in my job, yes. I could, but I think probably my situation is
more unique.
Not unique, norm. Yeah.
It's like financially speaking, it's a great offset. Like even if your employer wasn't paying you for those 5 days.
Again, we're talking about you not having to miss work. We're talking about draftees being able to.
So this all happens after hours, I guess.
Well, if they can attend the set, like let's say there are sessions.
Yeah.
Let's say that there's
the sessions are during the day, right?
Well, these wouldn't be. If the sessions are just.
Aren't the sessions whenever the House is in session?
Yes. So maybe I'm not sure if they would are they reviewing the Senate sessions and the MP sessions, or do they not even, or is just stuff presented to them later?
I thought they were just getting a vote when everyone else was voting.
That's
what my mind was.
Well, the way that it works right now is that the MP, as I understand, is that the House of Commons has their sessions. They do some work. They present the bill and then it gets sent off to the Senate. Then the Senate does their own homework, and then they have a session to discuss the bill or bills, and then they do their work and then send it back to the House of Commons, and that bounces back and forth like that. So that could.
At what point do the draftees get involved?
Well, the question is, let's say there's a bill being presented by the House of Commons. Do they watch the House of Commons and the Senate or the Senate, or does the House of Commons put together a pitch or a presentation that they review?
Like a summary of what the bill is?
Yeah, and
How
a
do you
pitch.
Trust them to. Who puts that together?
Well, then the bill is also there too. They get the actual language. They get the actual documents as well.
So there's somebody in, let's say, the House is in session. There's somebody there,
like
summarizing things for them.
Potentially, like all of the work could be happening on the draftees' own terms, like whenever they want to. I'm not. It could be like they just have to. Let's say there's a vote that's coming on a certain date. They just have to vote by that certain date, and you're operating under the premise that they're going to be reviewing the materials that are in question. Here's what I was proposing earlier is that, like you could have one of these sorts of systems where there's a video or a presentation package of some kind that's relayed to all the draftees, and there's some kind of check to make sure that they've actually, watched the video or reviewed certain materials.
But who's making this video?
Well, I guess it would be whoever is sponsoring the bill. They have to put that presentation together.
I guess so. It's just, how do you ensure that the information is accurate and not weighted to getting their bill through? All they're going to do is say.
Well, they're
doing that anyway, right?
Well, they have to present the bill to the House, to the Senate, and to the Governor General. Like. They always have to present the material, so they just do the same thing that they're doing.
They need to make it pretty abundantly clear how that bill is going to affect people.
Yeah,
in order
for sure.
And do they do that?
I don't know. I'm not sure how much of. I haven't. Again, I don't look at the package, the actual written material, so I don't know. Is there like a summary page, and then the bill? That kind of like describes the bill in general first.
My fear is that. If you're a draftee and you don't have a lot of time to do some research, you're just going to read that bill and say, oh yeah, it looks good, because it's going to always be presented to you in a way that you should vote for it. You know what I mean? Like, it's always going to be weighed to one side or the other. And it's going to be hard when somebody presents a bill, I assume in the House of Commons, the other parties already have a certain knowledge base to say, oh, I see what's really going on here. There's a lot of nuance in it.
We would both need to know the mechanics of how this process works.
There's no question
far more
that I think this is a good idea.
Yes.
Again,
it's just implementation. Yeah.
And just for the record, $2,000 a month, tax free.
Okay.
It doesn't get counted towards your income.
Right. Yeah.
Because
sure.
otherwise, you fall into a new tax bracket, and suddenly you're not making as much money.
Yeah.
So,
did you want to say anything more about the other thing that we were talking about?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. You seem upset.
You're
still upset.
I find your views upsetting. I find your...
You don't understand it at all that I feel... Let me just say it again. I want to say it again for anybody watching. Again, I just want to outline my view again. And I want you to tell me what the problem is with it, because I don't understand this. Mm-hmm. Again, my point of view is that person has every right to consider themselves a woman. They have every right to do that. They have every right to live their life as a woman. They have every right to think and feel and interact with the world as the version of themselves that they think they are. And I have every right as another separate entity, individual existing in the world, to take in the information around me and draw my own conclusions even if they're in contrast or contradiction to that person's point of view. And that's okay.
It's mostly because you're unwilling to change the way you go about things for someone else.
I'm still, again, civility. No, I'm not going to engage in threat. I'm not going to engage in abuse. I'm not going to engage in physical harassment or violence. All I'm going to do is have a different idea about biology. Biology, quote unquote. I don't know.
So I guess
I guess it could be other things.
If you were in conversation with someone, and let's say I decided that you're a woman, I've decided that as far as I'm concerned, you're a woman. You're comfortable with me thinking of you, treating you, not even treating you, thinking of you, and maybe referring to you as a woman. Are you okay with that?
Are you saying that you've reached this conclusion honestly? Because I don't see a way that you
into it.
But that's important. That's an important part of it.
So how do you define?
Because the only way that I see that happening is if somebody's trying to be
deliberate.
Yeah, like they're deliberately trying
to switch it around. You created
a scenario that. Okay, so you drew out this scenario,
let's say I feel that I am a woman. Deep in my core, I feel that I am a woman.
I don't like analogies.
Analogies
are silly.
Argue that with me
or hypotheticals.
You don't want to do hypotheticals?
They just don't work. Like I don't.
I think
it's very, very hard.
I think what I'm saying is 100% accurate.
Well, the one that you just did, I came back to you with a point about like what is the authenticity of this person's point of view,
How
and
are
you
measuring
didn't.
Authenticity. This goes back to hormone levels and parts.
I think that there's a level of human interaction that we all just understand.
No, there's a level of interaction that you understand. You're not willing to. My understanding is different from yours, but you don't want to entertain mine because it infringes on yours. That's what
I'm talking about. Something else. I'm saying the scenario that you described, where somebody comes to the conclusion that I am a woman. Mm-hmm. So this hypothetical, I asked you back, does this person actually think that, or are they being combative?
Yes, they do.
Then I would presume there's something not quite right about them, but my engagement with them would be the way that it is with everybody else. I'm just trying to get through the fucking conversation with them. Like, am I at the store? Are they my relative? Like, I'm just trying to.
Too specific.
But you gave me a specific scenario,
well, the point I was
so I'm responding to it.
Was more about how you felt about being referred to as a woman? How does that make you feel? When you know you're not, how does that make you feel? Take the person out of it that's doing it and just tell me, how does it make you feel?
But I'm not a woman.
But I think you are. But don't you understand that the people that you're saying are a man genuinely do not believe they are?
Right. And this, I see the point you're making.
When you say to me, yeah, but you're a man. And I say, no, I'm not. I'm a woman.
I see the point that you're making. You just
think I'm crazy.
I see the point that you're making. And this speaks to how fuzzy this thing is. And why, if you're legislating mandated thought and mandated speech over such a fuzzy topic where you are not going to get the majority of people agreeing to your position. It just isn't going to. Maybe it will happen in another 50 years. Just let me finish this point. The point though is about how fuzzy it is, and mandating language and thought and making it punishable, criminally punishable, or I don't know what you'd call it. Well, but there is like Bill C-63 speaks to some of this. I don't know the details of it offhand.
That's criminal.
That it's criminally prosecutable, the certain kinds of speech. Now I'd have to look it up to see more about it.
I just want to say, like, what you're saying as fact. Right now, you're saying, but you're a man, all that stuff. And I know you don't like me applying it this way, but there was a period in human history, not that long ago, where black people were factually inferior to white people. Scientifically and factually inferior.
Are you sure?
Were saying that.
Are you sure?
I'm saying it was generally agreed upon. Yeah.
That seems like you're just saying that that's your understanding, but you don't really have any evidence to support that.
Well, let's look it up.
How do we look that up?
You go online and you say, were other races inferior?
Interesting.
Was the medical profession in agreement?
This is sort of related. There's this kind of weird thing in Joe Rogan is having an archaeologist on his program all the time named Graham Hancock. Okay. And Graham Hancock is a believer in, or at least thinks that there's a possibility that Atlantis was actually a real place. Right. Okay. And
I've heard that before, actually.
And there's a lot of my understanding is, so he had a guy named Flint Dibelon who debated Graham Hancock and made Graham Hancock look very unprepared in that discussion. Okay. And looked like he really didn't know what he was talking about. And was either a grifter or a dreamer. Either way, that he actually was not somebody actually doing the hard research to come up with the conclusions that he has, and that it's coming from some other place. And Flint represented himself very well. I started looking at Flint more and found out that there's this commonly held belief amongst mainstream archaeology. I don't know if it's like ubiquitous or if it's just like certain sectors, that the idea of Atlantis existing brings in a whole bunch of racist ideology. Oh. And referencing back to other documents. And I just so happened to do some more digging. And again, my memory fails me too much hard living. But basically I found out that the documents that they were referencing actually don't make that kind of allegation at all about
race.
Yeah. And there's language in it that can be interpreted or can be spun as having a racist ethos to it, but on its face value isn't. So I actually had a back and forth with another archaeologist guy. I can't remember what his name, where he was arguing this point with me, and he ended up dropping it. But the kind of thing that you just said is the kind of thing that people say, but they don't really actually know, which is what we all do. we all talk about things that we don't really know. Most of us know nothing about anything, but we speak in terms that are so categorical, like as if as actually we've done the research or that we're academics in that field. So you say that it used to be factually.
Okay, so it was actually taught in medical schools in the 18th and 19th and the first half of the 20th century. The conceptualization of race moved from the biological to the blah blah blah.
Make sure you speak into the microphone.
Sorry. This is really long.
Yeah, I think we'd have to do a lot more work to find out
I know
how ubiquitous. Like, I'm not saying it wasn't held. That idea wasn't. I'm not saying that idea didn't exist.
It's the mainstream belief for quite a while.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't speak to that.
But that, I don't know. Then suddenly the point I'm trying to make is dismissed because you can't speak to it.
Well, you can't either, though. I mean, you're speaking about something that you don't really know if it's actually true or not. You just assume it is.
Dude, that's half the stuff we're talking about. I mean, then we start digging down into what is truth.
Yeah, I know.
That's a problem.
That's a problem right now. Nobody knows anything that's true.
Racism in medicine, a problem with roots over 2,500 years old, is a historical continuum that continuously affects African American health and the way they receive health care. Racism is at least in part responsible for the fact African Americans, since arriving as slaves, have had the worst health care, the worst health status, and the worst health outcomes of any racial or ethnic group in the U.S. Many famous doctors, philosophers, and scientists of each historical era were involved in creating and perpetuating racial inferiority, mythology, and stereotypes. Such theories were routinely taught in U.S. medical schools in the 18th, 19th, and first half of the 20th century. Racial inferiority was taught.
Okay.
So now, how do you define women from a scientific point of view? At what point does it start to become hormones?
But these things are complicated, right? So
Right.
So hold on, let me just say that, like, you don't know how much of what they were just talking about there, which I'm not arguing, but you don't know how much of that was culture influenced.
Oh, for sure it was.
You don't know.
I'm also saying that what you're doing is culture influenced.
I would argue
relying on what you believe to be fact about what makes somebody a male and a female, and you're sticking to it instead of saying, well, maybe my concept of male female is wrong. Because you're only basing it on, I don't even know what you're basing it on. You're basing it on how you were born. That's the only thing you're basing it on. Do you disagree, though? You're only basing it on how you were born.
No, I'm basing it on the fact that women have vaginas and
and
uteruses.
My example
Men have penises.
Right, but my example was of a man who cut off his penis, got all the hormone treatments, everything.
Medical procedures, medical augmentation.
So what makes him?
The fact that the fact that is not a natural form was.
So again, you're saying you have to be born that way for you to recognize you as male or female.
The part, right? I think the part that you're missing here is there's nobody being disparaged. No, the transsexual. The transsexual is not being disparaged by me saying I don't recognize you as a woman.
Yes, you are.
No, they're not, because I'm not saying woman or man is better. There is no better here. There's just different. And there's my understanding of 51 years on this planet, looking around the world. Every single person I know that's ever had a baby has had a uterus and has come into the world with a uterus and a vagina.
Okay.
And every single man that I've ever known
you're utterly incapable of changing your views, is what you're saying.
I would have to have somebody point to me one case of... No, it wouldn't be one case. It would be
is asking you to change how you're speaking. That's all they're asking.
I don't have a problem with with transitioning of making room for these people. There's no problem there. None. Zero. None.
Listen,
but just like you said, you have your line, which is athletic competition. Right? That's where for you it gets fuzzy. For me, it's a little before that. It's at language, forcing people.
It's at birth, right?
If you're talking about the definitions of biological, I guess I don't know how else words fail me. The definition, we're trying to make sense of the world, right? Like, I need to be able to tell the difference between a bus and a fire hydrant.
You don't need to be able to tell.
And the way that I can tell the difference between a bus and a fire hydrant is that bus has wheels, it moves, it goes. Right. You can walk on. It has doors. They open and close, and that you walk onto the bus, and you can sit down on a seat, and then the thing travels through time and space, and then you arrive at a different destination.
And now I remodel that bus and turn it into a car. Is it still a bus? Is it still a bus? Or is it now a car? Honestly, what is your answer? Say it. Come on.
Again, it's fuzzy.
It's
fuzzy, you know, and it comes back to the point. It comes back to the point.
Say it's fuzzy? What part of it is still a bus?
If it's a bus that got, so it's a whole bus, but now instead of a car,
I cut it in half.
Instead of a thing on the front that's instead of bus doors, you put car door on it. It doesn't really work.
No, it does.
Like, you can't actually open and close it because it doesn't fit. Can the vagina produce a baby?
You're not going there.
Can the vagina a medically augmented,
so a woman that can't give birth is not a woman?
Again, fuzzy.
Not really.
Well,
not by what
else can we draw? What other conclusion can we draw besides that this is very complicated when you and I can't agree? You and I are both, I think, very reasonable people. We've been friends for years, having very complex discussions about many different things, and we've both faced our demons many times together, and we can see how hard this one is to sort out. I don't think the answer is sending people to jail for not saying her or she. It can't be that. That can't be the answer. That can't. But Bill C-63 apparently, and I might be speaking out of my ass here, and I will.
I think you might be.
Maybe what I'll do is after this is done, I should have done my homework.
Yeah.
But I wasn't planning on talking about this.
This conversation came up.
Yeah.
This wasn't ever planned.
So I'll go do some homework after this, and maybe I'll put an addendum to this video to this podcast. But my understanding is that language is punishable criminally in this bill. That can't be the answer. It cannot be the answer.
I guess what the problem is that we're getting too stuck on one subject as well. We're getting stuck on the man-woman subject. And I think what we really should be talking about is the damage that language can now have in a way that it's never been able to do before.
Which comes back to the point of the metamorphosis that's happening with the human species right now with technology. We are becoming integrated with technology, and we have to figure out some things about ourselves first about this relationship that's screwing things up right now in terms of the ability to communicate.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. I just think, see, what you're seeing as people trying to imprison people for thought police almost, and I'm seeing this as a reaction to what maybe is a crisis right now, and we got to act, and maybe we're going to overreact.
But I think you're overreacting. I think you're overreacting right now. Like, you keep talking about this as if it's like apocalyptic. Like,
no, you're the one acting like it's apocalyptic.
I think the crackdown on free speech is potentially leading to a place that could end up very, very bad, like 1984 stuff. But what the point I was trying to make earlier is that, are we actually seeing more violence now? And the answer is no. The answer is less violence now than ever. Even 5 years. Even maybe. And maybe somebody will point to maybe somebody will point to an uptick, but over the last 40, 50, well, really the whole evolution of the species, but like we can now observe that like from, I don't know, 1950 until the present day, generally, coming back to that earlier point, everybody's safer, everybody has more stuff anyways, feeding themselves, and are housed on a level that we've never seen before. People are just safer now than they've ever been prior to, you know, the Second World War. You know, it's just people are safer now. And that doesn't coincide with what you're saying. Those two things don't go together. The threat that you're talking about isn't actually happening. People aren't going out in the street. People are expressing these opinions online. They're not going out in the street and beating up all the transvestites, transsexuals, homosexuals, etc. That's happening less now than ever. Even though this discussion is happening. Yes.
You know what's increased exponentially? Hate speech and harassment.
Has it?
Yep, I'm just reading about it right now.
Online hate speech is maybe, but like you bring into in person.
The internet has
new forms, right? New forms.
Right, so we
new forms. That hate speech existed before. It just wasn't online.
Okay.
It was our neo-Nazi schoolmates who just did it in person. Well, we didn't name his name, so it's fine.
Who has, by the way, turned over a new leaf and is not that.
Yeah, there you go. So, and I wanted to make this point earlier. Is when people are saying this shit, a lot of the time they're saying it because they're angry, yeah, but they're saying I hate my life. They're crying out for help. They're saying I don't know who else to blame. And one of the things we have to start understanding about this online discourse is that we're not taking in the information the way we need to be doing. This thing of scrolling and looking for the next thing that can make us angry, we got to change that.
Yeah.
We're the audience is as much of a problem. The scroller is as much of a participant in this thing as the poster. Yeah. This is a two. It takes two to tango situation.
So I don't know what your solution is.
Twofold. One is that we're gonna have to grow up with this tech. We have to grow up, and I was proposing this earlier. Is maybe we start actually including in the education system some kind of.
I just don't know if educating people is going to be enough, because it's like you were saying, like scrolling is it's affecting you on a different level. I know I am educated. I know that I should stop scrolling, but there is a chemical.
It might not be
brain.
necessarily like in the classroom. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure, but we're gonna have to figure this one out, right? We've already agreed on that.
I think
that we're gonna have to
slow down the amount of hate speech that can be out there online. You know what? If you want to have a rally and have hate speech, go for it. That at least.
But that's what used to that, which comes back to the point is that is what used to happen. Yeah. So the things that are happening online, it actually used to happen in person in front of people's houses. So it's actually better now, because it's not people with fucking crosses standing on people's lawns.
No, but it's
now they're just doing it online.
People sending one person hateful things.
Great.
Why is that great?
Because it's still just an email. It's still just a freaking email. It's not a cross. They're not burning down houses.
Okay,
So we know these two things: less violence, less actual physical violence now, and
more emotional violence,
which is definitely like at least a step in the right direction, at the very least. And the way that we solve this problem is coming to terms with tech. That's one of the things.
Yeah.
The other thing.
But in the meantime, what do we do?
Well, that's got to be happening now. It has to be happening now. And the fact that it isn't, and this is one of the things.
How do we slow it down? How do we slow down the?
What we're doing now is a part of it. You know,
that's not helping anybody right now who's
all the different podcasters that are having conversations online where they're trying to get into this stuff, and they're trying to have the people that have a divergent opinion sitting across from them at the table discussing it. And
that's great.
Right. That's how you do it.
How do we help somebody right now who's being harassed online? How do we do that right now? Because it doesn't have there's not time for conversations, because some people are going to kill themselves. Some people, well, I think that's probably one of the biggest things is, you know, all these young kids who are being
but that's
sex
happening.
blackmailed.
That's happening,
Sex-mailed.
right? And that has nothing to do with the LGBTQ whatever.
No, I'm
like
just talking about harassment.
right?
in
Yeah, yeah,
general.
yeah. So that's just
But how
happening.
do we stop
So
that?
again, that is a different. That is coming to terms with the internet. That is us trying to figure out this new tool.
I know,
But that's-
right now. How do we stop it? Right now.
Well,
If
I'm not
you-
sure
if
that I
your
have
daughter, If your daughter is being harassed,
Well, I'm
every
proposing.
day
I'm proposing an
by
idea. I
classmates,
don't.
what are you gonna
I'm
do?
proposing an idea which we could start right now. So it would have to happen fast, which would be like again. Let's say our drafted body of government proposes a bill saying we need some kind of nationwide program, whether it's part of the education system, part of healthcare, part of something else. I don't know how, where it fits in necessarily, but we need to develop a new program that is mandatory for ages 4 to 10 that teaches people about integration with this new technology. And maybe it happens in a classroom, maybe it
And
happens
that's
somewhere
great,
else.
but that's
That's
not
where
helping you right now.
but we
None of
can we
that
got
is-
and in the meantime we got to not make mistakes until we come up with the solution, but the solution is not saying everybody can't have their own opinions. Everybody
So-
can't
so
express what they
you
think is
can-
true.
Yeah,
That
I mean,
can't
there
be
is a
the
difference-
solution.
There's a difference between targeting someone. Okay, so I think you and I keep talking about the what's his name,
Jordan Peterson?
Jordan Peterson. Let's put that aside right now because that's different. Because he is actually being more general, I think. So let's talk about specifics. Let's talk about online harassment where somebody is harassing someone.
So you're saying when it's targeted, right? And I believe that there's
we're
already
talking about that right now.
yeah, but I believe there's already laws for that.
So how are we?
That would be like if you're, back in the day, you'd call somebody and you'd threaten them. It's the same thing. There's already laws in the books for if you're targeting, if you're specifically picking a person out and you're threatening them with any kind of communication like that, like if you're calling them and saying, I'm going to fucking kill you, fucking faggot, I think that's already punishable. I don't know that for sure, but
me
like
neither.
that must have been already in the books for like, because, phone calls and letters. I think that already exists for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think what we're talking about, Ari, I think you've actually switched tack a bit.
Yeah.
I think what we were originally talking about was just the expression of opinion that isn't targeted. Just somebody saying, I think this. I think gay people.
Well, we were getting really specific because I don't have a problem with somebody who isn't a mental health professional saying they don't believe that about gender and stuff like that. I don't have a problem with somebody saying that. My problem lies with somebody in a mental health professional saying that. That's where my problem lies. Honestly.
Yeah.
I don't like what the other guy is saying. I disagree with him, but he's just some blowhard. He's not somebody who is representative of that can have that real impact on another person. When you get, it's kind of like when teachers, anybody in a position of authority speaks, their words have a lot more impact than somebody who doesn't have a position of authority.
So where do you draw the line on position of authority? Where do you draw the line on
I
like
think
who's
when
gonna
you're
decide
a mental
what's
health professional-
permissible?
But they already
Like
have.
what if
the body of mental health professionals, which that guy is a part of, has decided, and he doesn't agree with them. So maybe he shouldn't be part of their body anymore.
and again you're again advocating, just not on a government level, but I don't know where that body fits in. There must be some kind of relationship between
Right.
them.
So your problem is
You're
that
again
the government's
advocating
getting
for
involved, right? It's okay if the school of
No, I'm not. I don't like that either.
Oh,
I don't think that anybody should be able. I think he should be able to sue them and say, I'm expressing my opinion on my own time, on my own terms, on my own platform. It has nothing to do with my profession.
But it has everything to do with profession.
My point of views do not enter that room. When I'm conducting therapy, I'm there doing my best to help a therapist.
As long as he
if somebody sees what I've posted online, if they have disagreement with them, I have no problem with my client moving on, feeling like they can't get the best care that they can possibly receive with me. That's absolutely their right to do that. They should have every right in the world to seek the best professional that's fit to help them out.
There are standards of practice.
Right. Practice. This is this is the distinction.
We are
this is not his practice.
And again, I'm into a realm of make believe right now in this conversation, because you are coming in your scenario. You're saying that he may have a patient who's transgendered, where he is assisting them in their therapy, following the rules that has been set out by the body that he is accredited by, but in his personal life has the exact opposite opinion. And he's doing that. In my scenario, he's not doing that.
I couldn't. We don't know what is actually in the.
But you're in what? In
the whatever you would call this body, the School of Psychologists. Yeah, we don't know if they have anything on paper that spoke to the issue. They might have come up with it of their own accord.
You're saying that
they might have cited
is just they've come up with it on their own accord.
No, I'm saying that that Jordan Peterson has violated the ethics.
Okay, we're getting into a lot of ifs and what.
Yeah. So we should probably move on. I just want to make this last point, because I haven't been clear. What I'm saying is that there's some kind of ruling doctrines that the school has put together that says that all therapists must conduct themselves according to this in their practice.
Right. Maybe it doesn't exist.
I'm sure there is something, but they might have taken, and I would say likely, they took the language that was in there and said that applies to this, even though there is no specific language that addresses this instance, but they've said this that applies to this. And what I'm saying is the spirit of the law is that in your
my point is that I don't think he is.
I didn't. Let me finish making this point. My guess is that they came up with their conclusion that he has violated their principles based on interpreting the laws that already exist, or interpreting the guidelines of ethics that already exist, and said that applies to this.
But that's the best anyone can do.
No, because Jordan Peterson would argue this is not part of my professional conduct. The litigants are not anybody that I've ever has ever sought my professional help. These are all people that have never been in the room with me. Some of them are in America. They're all of their litigation stems from what they've seen of me in my personal capacity, speaking of my personal opinions on these public platforms. This has no bearing on my practice, nor should the kinds of advocacy that I engage in my private life have any effect on what I do as a professional, as long as I'm respecting the law, as long as I'm honoring the laws of our country, and not harassing people, not molesting people, not abusing, threatening, condoning violence, or engaging in violence myself. I'm a legal, law-abiding citizen of Canada who's operating as my capacity as a therapist in good faith. There's no problem here.
It's interesting.
All right, I guess you want last word?
I guess what I find interesting is that someone like yourself, who has been treated very unfairly by the legal system, is now using the same legal system to, essentially, in my view, infringe on other people. He's just following the law. Is that the best we can do? I don't think the answer is by telling people that they can't say what they think.
I think that's the wrong road.
I know.
But you do like the idea of a drafted body of government. So that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. The other one is a tough nut, man. I've been thinking about it for years, for sure. Mm-hmm. And I'm still fuzzy. I agree with many things that you've said. I think you know where.
Right now, I just had the thought that I want to go home and read up on this. The problem is, and you and I have talked about this before, is I'm going to get so many differing opinions, and they're both going to be very reasonable.
Mm-hmm. And that's the world.
So I got to go with I got to follow my moral compass. That's all I can do. And that's what I'm doing. And when somebody, I'm going to say, disrespects somebody else's beliefs and how they feel, and I know I could get into another whole fucking ball of wax, that's where I have a problem.
Right.
And that's how I'm seeing it.
Right.
That's it. And that's really the best any of us can do is try and have a strong moral compass and follow it. Mm-hmm. And believe me, my moral compass slides all the time. And
do our best to not let our better angels run the show, as opposed to those
feed
devils.
The hungry wolf.
Yeah. Good note to end on. All right. Thanks, Ari. Appreciate it. And
we'll
goodbye, everybody. We'll see you soon.